To Michael Kugelman in Washington, D.C. He's the deputy director of the Asia program at the Wilson Center. Welcome, Michael. When a new administration takes over in the U.S., given how divided the politics are, when it's a new party in power, you can guarantee that any decision that is made, especially in foreign policy, the outgoing party is going to criticize every bit of it. But this situation now in Afghanistan is different, isn't it?
Yes, President Biden has been receiving tremendous levels of criticism from both the opposition and members of his own party. Clearly, the criticism has been sharper from the Republican side than the Democratic side. But indeed, events and especially images of the last week or 10 days from Kabul have really caused a tremendous amount of unhappiness and anger. And, that's not to suggest that the unhappiness with Biden stems from his decision to withdraw. It stems from what is perceived, rightly so, in my view, as the complete botching of the execution of the withdrawal, and clearly not being able to plan for the scenario of the Taliban taking over Afghanistan even before the U.S. withdrawal had been completed. So yes, President Biden is taking a lot of heat. I think it's too early, though, to judge whether it's going to have lasting political damage on him. I think that this issue has not captivated the U.S. general public on the whole. Much of the anger and unhappiness is emanating from the political class, from Capitol Hill, from the intellectual class, from the media. We're not seeing mass protests of Americans across the country protesting what Biden has done. But certainly, if we continue to see these terrible images that we're seeing over a period lasting a number of weeks and months, and things go from worse to even worse in Afghanistan, that's when I think you have to worry about the potential for political damage to the president.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, much of the bipartisan criticism of Biden at this point is how the pullout was managed, how it's currently being managed. But we all know that Trump set the scene for this situation by making that deal with the Taliban, for which he also took criticism from his own party.
Yeah, this is absolutely true, that the path was set in motion by the Trump administration's agreements with the Taliban that stipulated that U.S. troops would need to leave Afghanistan by May 1st, and that the Taliban would not shoot at them while they were leaving. And Biden inherited that agreement. So he was in a position where he had to make a pretty quick decision whether to stay or go. And he basically made the decision that the best thing to do was to go. But I think the issue here is where the blame or where the criticism of Biden comes down to is that two perceived strengths of Biden and his administration have seemingly become weaknesses. One is experience. This was the most experienced administration on foreign policy
Right.
to have taken power in many years, and yet we see that the experience is not showing. It failed to do these evacuations properly. Second, empathy. Biden has projected himself as an empathetic president with compassion and all that to contrast himself from President Trump. But the messaging from him and the administration has been surprisingly cold and impersonal. Not enough expressions of support and sympathy, in my view, for the Afghan people and what they're going through. And it really is quite striking.
Yeah, and these things have been pointed out in the press as well, not just the right-wing press. So what do you think of how this changes the U.S. view in the world and the view of U.S. reliability even to its own allies?
Well, I think clearly the anger among U.S. allies is centered around the fact that so many of their military forces, and should I say especially their diplomats, are in a position of danger now. And it's not only U.S. diplomats that have been struggling to get out, it's also diplomats from other NATO countries, NATO partners that are in Afghanistan as well, and the U.S. is being blamed for that. I don't think that the U.S. has lost credibility per se. I think it's still going to be in an okay place so long as the Biden administration continues to try to work with its partners and allies to restore this notion of multilateralism, first of all, in terms of developing a plan to deliver humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. And beyond that, so long as the administration shows that it wants to work with its treaties and allies and others on new and emerging threats, from climate change to the strategic rivalry with China, things will be okay. But I think that, so in other words, once the immediate crisis subsides, once U.S. partners and allies get their people, their diplomats out of Afghanistan safely, and things move on, I think that it'll be possible for the U.S. and the administration to salvage, its reputation, its credibility. So I wouldn't overstate that problem. But for now, certainly there is a lot of unhappiness with the administration, which again is quite striking, given that, as was noted earlier, there had been a lot of optimism and happiness about the Biden administration coming to power among U.S. allies and partners because of the view that it was going to truly be interested in rekindling friendships and partnerships with key U.S. Allies and partners. And clearly, what's happened over the last 10 days or so has been a setback to that perception and view.
Absolutely. Michael, great to have you. Thanks for sharing your insights with us.